Welcome to Talent Unfiltered. Located at the intersection of innovation and all things talent. Talent Unfiltered is presented by Hirewerx. Hirewerx. Talent forward. Now, here is your host, Ron Gauthier.
It's Monday, December 21st, 2020. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Talent Unfiltered, presented by Hirewerx. I am Ron Gauthier, coming to you as usual from Chicago. You, however, are looking at Dallas, Texas, which happens to be the home of our guest today. He is Craig Fisher, the CEO of Knack.io, which is an innovative job board for engineers, and he's going to tell us more about that today. He was also the head of marketing and recruiting innovation at Allegis Global, and he is the founder and president of TalentNet Media, which is a company that focuses on branding and technology innovation in many areas, but most specifically in recruiting. And we are very excited to have him here in Chicago. It is Christmas time. And it almost feels like we got a little bit of an early Christmas present because the vaccines are here. People are beginning to get vaccinated, and I think we can begin to see a light at the end of the tunnel. There is a time in which most experts think we're going to be able to return to something that resembles normalcy at some point in 2021. At the same time, there's a lot of tension and political unrest. There's a lot of discord in our country. And I am really hopeful that 2021 allows the opportunity to not only return to something that resembles normalcy, but also to bring the temperature down, to get away from the divisive rhetoric, to spend time trying to move the country forward, to advance things that help all of us as Americans. I don't care which side of the political fence you land on, Republican, Democrat, well, whatever. But what you have to understand is that in order to do anything, we have to be able to talk. And in order to talk, you need to understand as an individual, as a politician, as a citizen, that there are a significant number of people who feel differently than you do. And you need to be able to accept that. I'm not condoning violence or extremism or anything like that. I'm just saying we need to get back the ability to listen. And to listen, you have to be able to understand and accept that someone has a different opinion than you might. And we're pretty divided, folks. So chances are you're going to run into somebody who has different opinions. And do you want that conversation to be productive, or do we just want to continue to yell at each other? I hope that we choose the former. Now, before we get rolling for the day, I had mentioned that in the last episode that I was going to switch this from a weekly podcast to a monthly podcast because I was involved in a number of things that were going to take time. Today, I can announce one of those things that is going to be taking my time, and I hope that you find it to be beneficial. On January 18th, that week, we are going to be launching a new online community for people in the HR and talent space, and it's called Intelligent. Intelligent will be a highly curated community that will offer you the opportunity to connect with other professionals in the space. There will be content provided by people like our guest today, Craig Fisher, and other thought leaders in the space. There will be news from around the world of HR and talent. There will be stories about innovations in technology that can enable you and make your job better. There will also be two areas that I'm really excited about. One of them is a Reddit-style forum that will allow you to communicate with other people from around the world in your area of specialty. And while it's like Reddit, it won't have all the karma things that you have to do to be able to contribute. You'll be able to contribute your opinions right away. Doesn't mean it won't be moderated, but you will be able to contribute your opinions right away. Last but not least, there will be a curated job board specifically for talent, specifically for HR, and a job board that we're not looking to monetize. This will be, I think, at least to start out, it's going to be free for companies to post jobs on, but we hope that you will come there as you begin to search for your next step in your career. So keep an eye out for it. It's the week of January the 18th. You'll be able to find us at intelligent.com. That's INTALEGNT intelligent.com. I hope that you will join us. Now, before we get started, I want to remind you that you can connect with the show on Facebook, on Twitter, and on Instagram. The show is available on Spotify, Buzzsprout, SoundCloud. There's also a video version, which some of you are watching right now on YouTube. All you need to do is go to any one of those platforms, search Talent Unfiltered, and you will find us there. And if you like what we do, hit like and subscribe so you never miss any new content from us. All right, let's get to it. Our guest today is Craig Fisher. As I mentioned, Craig is the CEO of Knack.io. He is the president of TalentNet Media and the former head of marketing and recruiting innovation for Allegis Global, and he joins us here today. Hey, Craig, man, thank you so much for taking time to join us here today on Talent Unfiltered. How are you? I was thinking about this. The last time I saw you was here in Chicago, and it was at the Tech Recruit Conference at the Merchandise Mart at 1871, and you gave a great talk there. But I haven't really had much chance to connect with you since then. So, how are you? How are things going?
Great. I'm having a wonderful 2020 run in spite of everything. It's just been a phenomenal year for me. I'm concerned about the world, but my world has been good.
Yeah, it's I follow your career with great interest. I was really fascinated by the work you did at Allegis, and now what you're involved in at Knack. Obviously, TalentNet Media is really an interesting organization, and so it was part of the reason why I wanted to get you in here, because I do think so many people have struggled with 2020. I think that from political unrest to uh, to COVID to unemployment issues, I just think 2020 has taken its toll. And in order to kind of get a glance forward, I wanted to spend some time talking about how 2021 or how 2020 impacted us, but also how you think 2021 will evolve because of that impact. So I'm going to ask today that you put your futurist, forward-thinking hat on as we as we go through the conversation. So first up, we talked about this a little bit. I really believe that 2020 has significantly accelerated what's going to happen in the gig economy. I know a lot of people were talking about it being, a few years down, maybe even a decade down the road before it was really predominant. And I think it's made for companies the idea of gig workers or remote workers much more acceptable. I think that they've realized that they have been afraid of something that maybe they didn't need to worry about. In essence, the Band-Aid's been torn off. And I'd like you to talk about what you think the critical things are that organizations are going to need to be prepared for when it comes to competing for talent, because candidate preferences are going to change significantly as we go forward. I'd love to get your take on that.
So it's really interesting. I've been doing this year a project with a company called Cisco Meraki.
Mm-hmm.
So Meraki is the cloud intelligence and dashboard for Cisco networking, right?
Okay.
And they're one of the few companies bought by Cisco that maintained its own brand identity. And so they've asked me to help them sort of flesh out an employer value proposition to kind of say we are Cisco, but we're really also Meraki, and there's a little bit of difference without offending Cisco, right?
Sure.
Yeah, and people go back and forth between those organizations, but there's a lot of people who've been there for a long time. And as part of my project, I've interviewed about 27 people from all different levels of the organization, right? New hires all the way up to the general manager, right? The head guy.
Mm-hmm.
And what to expect is such a funny question, because they've said that when they left the offices, they said, we're not coming back until at least summer of 2021. And even then,
Mm-hmm.
it's going to be at will, right?
Okay.
And so it's, we've already seen Dropbox say we're going away from our offices. We're going to have regional, hubs, small hubs in cities. And there's a lot of that going around. Now, at the same time, Cisco Meraki is all about their office culture. everyone to, almost everyone that got hired before COVID says that one of the first things they noticed when they came into that office was the passion and the energy and the respect for people that they had. Now that can be translated into, a remote culture, and they're Cisco and they have all the tools for this, right?
Sure.
Absolutely. But a lot of those people really want to be back in the office with their peers. And so I think it's a little bit of a mixed bag, right? We're going to have to be prepared to accommodate people that don't want to come back. But those companies that have a really strong office culture are also going to have to be prepared to figure out a way around that.
Mm-hmm.
So there's going to be sanctions in place, regardless of, what kind of medication that we have to fight this. It's not really going to change the precautions that we'll have to take from now on, because this isn't going to be the only coronavirus. I mean, clearly.
Yeah, I had this conversation with a client today. We were actually talking about onboarding and what that meant going forward. And while I think a lot of organizations had given thought to the idea that onboarding a remote employee is different than onboarding a person who's in your office. When you have, as you pointed out, people who aren't going to want to come back, or you've gotten accustomed to the idea of having a software developer in a tertiary market, right? That's maybe never going to be in the office on a full-time basis. You have to figure out how to translate not only culture, but how do you get them a phone? How do you get them access to everything? I've seen big companies and small companies struggle with this idea of onboarding and getting people into their organizations. You bring up another interesting point before we move on to the next thing, and that is, this idea that being prepared. I think that this has brought to the forefront the idea that continuity planning is something people are going to have to focus on, right? They're going to have to think about, what do I do when the next one comes along? Because to your point, I just don't think this is going to be the last thing we're going to deal with, whether that's pandemic or virus related, or whether that's potentially social unrest, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And boy, there's there's a big debate going on about that right now, right? I mean,
well, yeah,
we don't know what's going to happen.
I try to stay as far away from politics in these conversations as I can, because you never know where somebody lands on that stuff. But there's clearly a division. My hope is for 2021 that whether those divisions are 100% resolved, we can at least bring down the temperature a bit from some of the rhetoric that's going on, and I think that that's true on both sides. So, okay, moving on. So we were talking about COVID, and while the vaccines, I think, may address the threat of COVID-19, there are a bunch of other issues, and we were just touching on them that have bubbled to the surface in very, very dramatic ways. Politics, social justice, true equality, I think, are at the forefront of our dialogue as a society, regardless of whether of how you lay out in that, where you fall on that. We are an incredibly divided country. In your opinion, and this is, I think, this may be a tough question to answer, how will these issues and the experience of 2020 change the way companies approach employer branding? Because you run the risk of alienating on both sides, regardless of how you come out. And depending on where you are in the country, you may be predominantly Republican, you may be predominantly Democrat, right? You still have to have a strategy that talent doesn't necessarily know political division. So how do you do that? How would you advise companies to think about that as they go forward?
So there are certain corporate leaders that really do hitch their wagons to a political party or a political candidate, right? That's very common. But companies as a whole, I don't think have to do that, right? And I think the bigger problem for organizations is not national politics, but office politics, right? I mean,
Very good. Okay.
It's one of those situations where you have to now espouse flexibility, okay, inclusion, and things that your HR grandparents didn't prepare you for, right? How do we come off as a flexible employer that is concerned about our employees' health and safety, well-being, right? Mental well-being, things that we've had programs for, but weren't really at the forefront of our job descriptions
Mhm.
and our careers pages and things like that. And now they should be. So an inclusive workplace, a health conscious and safe workplace, and a flexible workplace are the things that are going to be table stakes in 2021.
Do you think that there are companies out there who are geographically, they feel, and I know this is going to sound really, this is a really loaded question the way I'm going to ask this, but do you
Mhm.
think that there are companies out there who got their start in geographic areas where if they go that direction, they may feel like they are alienating potential customers in their area? Because I do think we're so divided. I wonder how people are going to respond to that. And maybe I'm overthinking it. Maybe I'm overanalyzing it. But it seems to me now we watch every word we say, we watch everything we do, and I wonder if companies are feeling that pressure on both sides of that equation.
So I think that's been happening for a while, right? We've already seen the flight out of, the West Coast.
Mhm.
Tech hubs are popping up in Austin and Dallas and other places where literally companies are putting up new corporate offices just to take advantage of the talent pools there. And so I don't think, I mean, there are certainly organizations that are, SMBs, medium-sized companies, Ford, for instance, right? I mean, you've got to have a big presence in Detroit if you're going to be Ford or GM, but that's never going to go away. And so I don't think we're going to run the risk of saying, well, we don't have a presence here. I just don't think that's going to happen. But all the engineers who were living in the Bay Area have started to move to the Rocky Mountains, for
Mhm.
instance, and they're driving up prices in villages all over the Rocky Mountains for homes. That's not going to change, right? That they're going to like that lifestyle, right? If they've
Sure.
got good Wi-Fi and NAC, the job board for engineers to find remote work is all about that, because there are enough of those people doing really good work that can collaborate on Slack and do hand over an entire project in a short amount of time
Sure.
without having to be in an office somewhere. I think the days of having basements full of coders is just going to go away.
Yeah, there's been companies like Search Forward, that has operated on that idea of having developers all over the country,
Yeah.
really project-based kinds of people. I think the evolution of the gig economy probably gets sped up. I think what concerns me is marginalized workers in communities where um, they may be. Uh, uh, I don't even know exactly how to say this because I want to make sure I say it correctly. Marginalized workers who potentially are in geographic locations where diversity, inclusion, and things like that may not be at the forefront of how people are thinking. I don't want to generalize and say that's the way it is, but the reality is that there are marginalized workers out there. There are people who don't get a fair shot up and down the spectrum, and I think as we talk about diversity and inclusion, we have to think about the political implications and social implications of what that might look like in a particular area of the country.
Mm-hmm.
That's just my thought.
Well, I'll tell you this, jobs are still attached to a location.
Mhm.
Okay. Because when you put a job in an applicant tracking system, you have to give it a location.
Yep.
Now, companies are starting to add the word virtual to a lot of their jobs and in their applicant tracking system so they can say that.
Mhm.
But 9 times out of 10, the job is still attached to a location. So it's going to have a location on there, even if it says virtual is, an option.
Sure.
And, an interesting thing, I was called last week by a big, let's say a very large company that started out as an online book retailer.
I think we might know who that is.
And they wanted to interview me for a head of employer branding job there. And I always talk to everybody who wants to interview me because I can probably refer someone, right?
Sure.
And so I said, look, I'm kind of tied up right now. This is not a good timing for me, but I bet I could find someone really good for you. And they said, great. And so I asked around a little bit, and I found some folks, and then they came back and said, oh, we just found out that the job has to either be in Seattle or Nashville. And I'm like,
Okay.
very interesting policy or strategy for trying to attract people in this economy.
Sure.
It's I like the boldness of it, but it's good luck.
Yeah, I think that I think 2021 has some interesting changes. Maybe not as dramatic as we might think, but I think when 2022 comes around and we are fully free of the virus, that's when I think you're really going to see the impact of how candidate preferences have changed, how 2020 has changed the way candidates think about work in terms of location. But it also I think you'll begin to see the impact of how companies are going to respond to those changes. I think you get most of the first half of 21 isn't really going to change much because of how long I think it's going to take to get the vaccine out, or at least what I've heard. But at some point, that switch is going to flip, and it's going to be a slightly different environment than I think we're dealing with today.
That's right.
You're somebody that I think really understands enablement technology and technology in general as it relates to recruiting talent and by default HR and some of the things that are going on there. I think this year has highlighted the benefits of technology in our lives personally and professionally. It has also, at the same time, shown some of the shortcomings. If you think about what happened with Google services the other day, and in that case, it was more than just Gmail services that were affected, right? I read a story where a guy had Google Home and couldn't turn on his heat, couldn't turn on his lights because everything was down.
That's right.
So where do you think the biggest innovations in technology will come as it relates to recruiting and the practice of it over the course of the next 2 or 3 years?
So a lot of the innovation is going to come in the diversity and inclusion, the DEI space. There are currently about 6 or so kind of major players that attack, the way job descriptions are developed to remove offensive pronouns and other things. And there are some pretty good players out there that are starting to blind resumes so that you don't have any bias on the way in with an incoming sourced candidate. I think the idea that we're going to get better at this is probably accurate. What it is right now is sort of surface level stuff, right? But when I started with Allegis installing chatbots on career sites, 5 years ago, they were dumb and they didn't really do much unless you had paid the companies that built them to, put answers in them on a regular basis.
And to monitor it on the back end, right?
That's
to
right.
have some kind of human assistance. Yeah.
Well, and the first thing that everyone would ask for when they got into the chatbot is, can I speak to a recruiter? And so we had to put a button in immediately that's linked to a round robin recruiter. But several years later now, right, the chatbots are actually working pretty well because they've got enough data from some of these early big enterprise level customers to function properly. And you can just kind of template that and it works. And so they are getting more intelligent, smarter. The machine learning is kind of learning. And so I do think we'll get better with the DEI technology that really helps companies be more inclusive and less biased. And that's one of the most exciting places that technology is going right now.
Yeah, it's interesting because I played in the AI bot space for a period of time.
You did?
Oh, right. Yeah. And I went through a big presentation with a partner, and I learned more about the back end sausage making of bots than I ever thought I would ever want to know.
IFTTT, buddy. Right?
Well, but what you learn is that the machine is only as good as the decision trees that you put in it, right?
That's right.
And there's some type of observation that needs to happen. I think that I think what happens, I'd love to get your take on this too. I think what happens is that people see something shiny
Hmm.
and they think AI and they think, oh, this is going to do all the decisioning for me. And that's just not what it does. And you can look at, Robot Vera, you can look at Maya, you can look at Aria or Olivia from Paradox. You can look at
Hmm.
any of those, and they're still beginning to kind of feel their way through what that looks like, how
That's right.
that feels, right? Um, what do you think? Where do you think AI is actually going to land
Hmm.
as it relates to recruiting? Because I don't think it's going to be in bots. I don't think we're ever going to have a bot that
Right.
really does. There may be some good machine learning, but I don't think it's ever going to be a situation where the bot's just going to make a decision. Oh, you should talk to Ted, right?
Hmm.
Like I just don't. I don't know if that's the case.
No, I think what we're going to see is more in the realm of kind of experiential interviews. You're going to be immersed in a 3D world that you can sit and have conversations with people, right? That's going to be the real
Hmm.
interesting part of the technology. And the AI is going to come in with facial recognition and reconstruction in these, virtual environments. And that's how we're going to end up having meetings as well, right? In the long run. Right now, even if you were in an office, and before COVID, you're in an office, you have your meetings virtually already from your office, right?
Hmm. Yep.
Very rarely is the conference room available for everyone to go meet. And even if you
Almost
do, half the
never.
people don't
Yeah.
show up and they dial in. That's right.
Yep.
And so I really do think that the sort of immersive technology is going to be the way that AI goes to help us out. The other thing that I think, it's interesting, if you listen to Elon Musk, he says that we're going to have to get um, nano needles stuck in our head so we can take a ride with the technology.
Yep.
And I think he's right, because we've already got a sentient external layer to ourselves, right? It's here. This is our smart
Exactly.
external self, right? And
Exactly.
we're kind of lost without it. So pretty soon we're going to be able to communicate with this thing without doing any touching, and that's kind of where
Well,
I think it'll be.
wearable tech is coming, right? I mean, we
Yeah.
all know that that's headed our way. I think, um, if you think about it, that's almost I don't know if you're old enough to remember this. I always feel like I'm 1,000 years older than anybody I talk to. But do you
I
remember
doubt you're older than me.
I'm 55. So,
Okay, you're close.
do you remember the movie Johnny Mnemonic?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that's exactly what that sounds like, right? You plug it into your head and boom,
Yeah.
and you're going, and you look at, Google Glass and all of these other wearable technologies now that
Hmm.
people are trying to, to roll out. I do think technology is going to influence what we do. What I'm most interested in is AR and VR. I want to see
Yeah.
what things that will bring to the table. I am the Chicago lead, and I think you're familiar with the organization Hacking HR.
Hmm.
I run the Chicago chapter here, and one of our new partners is really into this stuff. She comes from Insperity,
Yeah.
really smart, a person really into it, and I'm excited to see where that goes. Do you have any thoughts about AR and VR in the space?
Yeah, and so when I say immersive tech, right, that's what I'm talking about,
It's what I
certainly,
thought.
right? Yeah,
Yep.
absolutely. And I don't think it's necessarily going to be in the form of goggles and glasses. I think it's going to be heads-up display right where we are. Right. I mean, this doesn't look very technical from the camera's point of view. What I've got going
Sure.
on behind me is with DVDs and whatnot, but in front of me is high definition camera and 4K monitors and a very high tech microphone, and we're just this close to being able to sort of beam you right into my field of vision here, right? And
Mhm.
then we're kind of doing it right now. And so I think that's where AR and VR is going to go. It's going to be from any screen that can be projected onto any surface anywhere. And just like in the hollow, whatever they call that, the hologram room on
Hologram,
Star
sure.
Trek,
Yep.
the
Holodeck. The holodeck.
holodeck
Yep.
just
That's what it
turns
was.
into a different place.
Yeah, yeah.
And
Well,
that's,
think about what they do at Coachella when
yeah,
they recreate Tupac or whoever. Uh,
it's awesome. It's amazing.
it's
Well, and
unbelievable.
and Jay-Z just had some uh, really cool stuff happened with him.
Really?
Yeah, he's reading something. It's not Jay-Z, it's recreated.
Wow.
But that's the amazing technology. I did a podcast about it on the Inside Talent podcast, where uh, the technology is going to be able to mimic your way of writing and talking
Sure.
so well that it can give automatic answers. So
Yeah, if you think
I like
about it,
that.
when you talk about content creation today, there are tons of options out there to have bots write your content.
Oh
Give it a
yeah.
subject, it'll go out, research it, and it'll write it. As I've begun to put together Intelligent, which by the way, I'm really excited to have you involved in, even if it's just a little bit.
Yeah.
But it's one of the things I looked at, like, okay, how am I as a person or as a few people, how are we going to create enough stuff? Can you do this? And the one glitch that you get is sometimes the language is a little stiff,
Hmm.
right? But
That's
if you're
right.
just trying to put out information and you want something that's very quick, dirty, and easy, there are options out there for you to do that
Hmm.
already.
Yeah.
Okay, so
GPT-3 is
exactly.
nigh upon us.
Exactly. Okay,
Yeah.
so as I mentioned at the top, this is our last show of the year. I'm going to ask you to put on your prognosticator's hat,
Hmm.
and I would like to get your take on the lasting impressions of 2020.
Yeah.
How is this going to long term affect internal talent teams and external agencies? How are they going to take the lessons that they've learned and either use them or be negatively influenced by them? And I know you've worked with both sides of that coin.
Yeah.
I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
Well, so I think that, like we said before, I think health and well-being are going to be on the front of all kinds of recruitment training. There are more sort of there's more restrictions coming on how we can message people, right? That came out of 2020, not COVID related, but more just privacy related. And so that's going to be a big deal as well. And then I also think that, we're going to get more bias training, and there are still companies doing it badly, blatantly doing it badly. There's legislation now that is stating that we have to disclose salaries at all levels for all different types of workers. That's coming. That's not going to be an option.
Sure.
And so that's going to change, the way we do a lot of things as well. In theory, a lot of states and cities and some companies voluntarily have already put in measurements where you can't ask about salary history, but there's an easy workaround for that.
Hmm.
What's your salary expectation? That's the easy workaround. That's going to change too. So we're not going to be able to write the same old job descriptions, and we're not going to be able to ask the same old interview questions. And we're probably not going to be able to require people to be in a specific location for a job, in the coming years.
Yeah, it's one of the things that I do in my practice is I'm a certified consultant in the predictive index, and those assessments around that and how you build high performing teams is a big part of what
Mhm.
I do in my daily business.
I like all
And
those companies that do
so do
that
I.
stuff.
Well,
Yeah.
and I'm a big PI fan. I
Yeah.
also like. There's another company out there. If you haven't, you probably already know about them. A company called Human Intelligence.
Yeah. Oh yeah. It's
Yeah,
that's a
they
stuff.
that and Hire Guru. They're two
Yeah.
products. Really, really good stuff.
Yeah.
But I'm a firm believer that building high performing teams and understanding team dynamics
Mhm.
will change the way that culture gets established in an organization. And I
Mhm.
think talent can play such a critical role in that by using tools like unbiased assessments,
Mhm.
understanding organizationally what the goals are. I think recruiters need to be, especially internally. So often, I think they're mired in regulatory things that they have to do, tours, phone screens, all the red tape that they have to cut through
Yeah.
in order to deliver a candidate to a hiring manager. And
Mhm.
so often they're not given the in-depth business knowledge to understand why that position is important, how
Yeah.
that person fits into the team. And I really think you and I have talked about this too. If you were going to train external recruiters on anything, people in
Mhm.
agencies, teach them why decisions get made the way they do in an internal organization,
That's right.
because they
Yeah.
have no idea. They don't
They don't.
understand the decisioning. And then pardon my French, they're pissed off because somebody they think drags their feet for no apparent reason.
Right.
And the internal teams don't relay that information back very well. So
Yep. They don't. And communication is the one thing that we can easily fix.
sure.
Right. That's one thing that chatbots and AI can do really well. They can remove some of those non-recruiting activities that
Mhm.
make, the process so much smoother for candidate experience, manager experience, and
Sure.
recruiter experience. And all of those things are important.
Sure. It's it's so nice to meet a person who thinks exactly the way I do about all.
We might as well give a shout out to Juan Betancourt while we're here, since we're talking about
Exactly. Um,
intelligence.
in a minute, I want to take a second. I want to talk about your new company, NAC.io. I want people to understand what that is because I think it's a really fascinating organization.
Mhm.
And I know that you have other things, TalentNet Media, and all the things that you do around that. And I want to have some time to talk about that. But before we get to that, I'd like you to take 1 second and
Mhm.
just give recruiters out there, the practitioners in the audience, one
Mhm.
thing they can work on that will make them that much better in 2021.
Yeah. So, my friends, start thinking of yourself as an account manager. Okay. Start being the best resource a hiring manager has for your organization. Don't make him go to a million different people to get answers, right? Be the point of contact. Start focusing yourself on being the go-to person, right? And eventually you will be. And I think companies, smart companies, are going to end up sorting recruitment into this. So a manager gets one representative from the recruiting group, another manager might get another, and things get sorted out that way. And it's a smoother thing. My friend at Southwest Airlines did this for his talent organization, and he said it worked amazingly well. So, I've seen it, and I thought to myself at the time, gosh, if every recruiter just thought of themselves in that manner, things would be much better.
Yeah, it's so often I think recruiters get are misunderstood, right? Um, People often forget that we're salespeople and
Yeah,
that sit inside of HR,
that's
and
right.
that's why HR people really don't like us.
Hmm.
Especially when we're external, they don't realize that the people they have on their teams internally are the same
Right.
people. But that ability to sell and close a deal gets shut down by the requirements, by the regulations, by the internal corporate
Hmm.
structure. You can't operate the same way, but you can take some of those things like you're talking about and pull it forward. So,
We're salespeople, by the way, and you're onto something there, Ron. We're salespeople in the advertising business.
yep,
Okay, I
yes,
mean
yes,
that's
yes, yes.
that's what we do for a living. We're not HR.
No,
Okay, and being in HR is fine because it's a people thing, but we're salespeople in the advertising business. That's what we do.
well, and that's what recruitment marketing is, right? I mean,
That's
it's an advertising, it's
that's
outbound.
what recruiting is.
Exactly, exactly. My partner at Hirewerx would love to hear you say that. He's been saying that for 35 years. So
Hmm.
you're a genius. I don't know if you know that or not, but you're an absolute genius,
Why,
and
thanks.
I'm gonna make sure he knows that. So before I let you go today, tell us a little bit about NAC.io because I think it's a very very cool concept and an
Mhm.
interesting take on really curated job opportunities for people. And I'd love you to explain what you guys are doing.
Yeah, so a recruiter who has a successful, executive search business and used to work on one of our account teams at Allegis, got together with an engineer that he met out when they were both working in the Bay Area, right, and in startup
Hmm.
city, and uh, he hired this guy for some consulting gigs, and they got to be friends, and they got to talking and said, man, there's got to be a better way to do this, because engineers have a miserable experience on job boards and LinkedIn and places like that where they get deluged with opportunities that aren't accurate for them. And so they set out to make some beautiful software, easy to use from your phone, like real easy to use from your phone, and it is pretty, and make it real simple to enter your profile and then get very, very finely tuned matching to jobs that are only right for you. And so a JavaScript developer is not going to get a bunch of jobs for Java development and C++, right?
Sure.
And so, for engineers, that's amazingly unique because that's not the experience they generally have. And it's almost hard to find a job because you can't sort through all the ones that you get hit with that aren't a match. Similarly with employers, right? I mean, you put a job out now and you get 10,000 applicants.
Mm-hmm.
And we have to use, sorting software that stack ranks the candidates. And, some of them do it okay. Wouldn't it be better if your software just sent you the 10 closest matches in the first place? Right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, as they come in. And so, the algorithm works both ways. In the middle of this software, there's a job board for the engineers that's really smooth and they can communicate and apply directly to jobs scraped from all over the place. Employers can input their own jobs and get, a special feed at the top of
Sure.
the board and get directly matched with the candidates, and they can communicate with each other that way. And then there's one for recruiters. So let's say you and I are still working a desk doing recruiting, and we've got, hundreds of resumes that have come into our inbox, and we've got them stuffed all over the place in Dropbox and, Drive and whatever.
Yep.
You can't search those resumes very well. Doing it in your inbox doesn't work, right? Doing it in Dropbox or Drive doesn't work very well. This gives you an engine where you can just put all those resumes and put a job in and match those resumes against it. And it's a really, really cool thing. And so the entry-level version of that for recruiters will be free up to, I don't know, 500 or 1,000 resumes, something like that. Yeah. And then there'll be a subscription model for employers and recruiters. And it's pretty slick. It really is.
That's fascinating. There's so many different ways that people are trying to solve the sourcing issue, right? We talk to, like my clients, my internal clients, we talk about this all the time. It's the one function that most internal people just aren't very good at. Sourcing is just not their strength because of all the other things that they have to do. And so when you have a tool that addresses a concern that we know engineers have, which is you're talking to me about a job that you don't know anything about, or you're looking at my resume and you know nothing about me, that's one of those complaints that I think we hear all the time. So I totally get it. I think it's outstanding. How would somebody get in touch with you if they wanted to learn more about it or begin to try to take advantage of your service?
Yeah, you can go to knack.io and download the Android app or the iPhone app right now and use it and put a job in there if you're an employer, or, there's two questions. Do you want to hire somebody or do you want to find a job?
Sure.
And so you just click on the one that you want. If you're an engineer, you go there and you put your information in the job board and it automatically starts matching you to jobs that are right for you. And the great thing about it is because it's made by these engineers, and it's a really, really good team of engineers that all do remote gigs, it focuses on remote jobs. So you can filter for remote only jobs, and you don't see that very often, right? It's very tough to actually get, you try to filter for remote jobs and you don't get anything. But this does a really good job of that too. So it's pretty cool. So knack.io is where you find out about that.
I am very, very excited to see how that goes. In fact, when we get done, I'm going to download it because I just want to take a look at it. I know that you have some other things going on with TalentNet or Talent Media. Tell us about that briefly, and just what are the things coming up that people want to be involved in? I know you do a lot of live events and you have a podcast. You're a great voice in this space, and I want to make sure that we're pointing people towards you if I can.
Thanks, Ron. Well, so talentnetlive.com is where people can find out about our upcoming events. We host a couple of live events, not in person this year and probably not for the first half of next year, but they're virtual now on the Hopin platform. And that's the TalentNet Live Conference. And it's a blast. The community is amazing. The speakers are all very accessible, and it's a place where we as speakers all go to kind of showcase our newest ideas to our peers. And so the audience gets to sit in the middle of that, which is really, really cool. And then I pick people who are interested and attentive and interactive audience members to be on a panel for the next one. So, you might be there interacting with all your thought leaders or peers and speakers and get picked for the next one if you're really involved and, and have something to say. So this is me trying to find new voices all the time. It's a great event. It's the largest regional recruiting conference in the US.
Oh, wow.
But this year we've incorporated a global theme and global speakers because it's virtual. So we can, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And it's great. And so the next one will be the week of March 15th. It will be held during the NACathon, which is a hackathon being put on by NAC during South by Southwest.
Okay.
And that is nacathon.org.
Okay.
So, yep, KNACK-athon.org. You can check that out. And then TalentNet Media does employer branding and technology solutioning for talent acquisition teams. And we also do, personal brand and team brand training for sales, marketing, and recruiting teams all over the world. And so, this year I've been working on some really fun projects, upskilling TD Ameritrade that got bought by Charles Schwab.
Very
Some of
cool.
their people are going to have to go find internal jobs or external jobs.
Sure.
So they paid somebody to upskill them, like get their LinkedIn profiles all tricked out and teach them how to find jobs. And I did this amazing EVP project with Cisco Meraki. And we've just done an amazing recruitment technology project with Kelly Services. And I did that in conjunction with Recruiting Advisors, which is Jim Schneider's company.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And then in return, he helps me produce conferences because we switched to virtual. All of these HR technology companies and employers are coming to me now to produce their virtual conferences because we're good at it.
Yeah.
And Jim helps me do that. And so we do all these fun projects together and it's been a blast.
Awesome. I don't know. When do you sleep, man? I thought I was busy. Yeah. I'm not even close. It's, I'm really excited about 2021 and what it has to offer. I am so grateful that you've agreed to, when you can be a part of Intelligent. I think it's going to be great to have your voice included in that. And
love to do it. That's great.
And,
I love what you're doing there.
And I think it's going to be interesting, man. I really do. I think it's going to be kind of a one-stop shop for people in talent, and that's my hope. Is that?
Why don't you tell us a little bit about it since we're here talking about it right now?
Well, I don't like talking about my own stuff, but in essence, Intelligent is going to be a community, and I talked about it a little bit at the beginning. It's a community that is really focused on talent in a number of different ways. We want to be able to hear from thought leaders. We want to be able to get strategies that we can take out and apply to someone's job. Very often there are, I think it's tough to find the right next opportunity, right? So a very curated niche job board for people in talent that doesn't really cost you to post, right?
Yeah.
I'm not interested in monetizing this. To me, this is about the greater good. This is about kind of the altruistic nature of wanting to make talent a better function. And to do that, you need to be able to offer training. You need to be able to offer opportunities like TalentNet Live. You need to be able to connect people with their peers. One of the things we do that I think could be interesting, it could end up being a mistake, is we're creating a forum, like a Reddit-like forum, where you can have all of the conversations you want with your peers without all the crazy karma stuff that you have to get before you can have an opinion about something, right? We want this to be an open forum community where people can grow. If they're more established in the business, there's still things you can learn. If you're new, voices like yours and other people that I'm talking to are going to be critical to them becoming the best that they can possibly be. And I'm really excited. We're going to kick off, I think it's the third week in January. So I'll be hounding you for content here before long.
Absolutely. Glad to deliver. I've got lots of content.
And I do know. I did a search on you, and there is, if you want to know something about Craig Fisher, go search YouTube, man. You will find tons and tons and tons of stuff. Buddy,
Going back many years, yeah.
Yeah, well, but good stuff. The thing is, guys like you and Jason Seiden, and people that I really respect have been, and Jason's been a guest on our show before, you guys have been kind of out at the forefront of this for a while. And you've been thinking about it in different ways. You guys were talking about personal brand before people really understood what personal brand was. And I just think that kind of thought process is really important. All right, man, I'm going to let you go. Thank you so much. And I'll be in touch with you here shortly. And I really appreciate you coming on the show today.
Thanks, Ron. Glad to be here.
All right, everybody. That is Craig Fisher, and he has given us another amazing session here on Talent Unfiltered. All right, that's going to do it for us today. I'm really grateful that Craig was able to join us. He is one of those voices that has such a breadth of knowledge in this space in terms of branding and recruitment innovation. And he's somebody that I learn something from each and every time. And if you're not following him now on LinkedIn, I would suggest that you get out and do a connect with him. He's an extremely approachable guy. And go check out NAC.io or any of the other events that he mentioned here today. Now, if you like what we did here today and you want to stay up to date, then like, subscribe, and share on your platform of choice. Don't forget to turn on the notification button so you never miss any new content from us. Join us again next month when Aaron Koop from Authentically EC joins us to talk about leadership, emotional intelligence, and wellness. Until then, stay safe, stay healthy, and have a great holiday season. We'll see you in 2021.